the only way to get people to kind of look and dive deep is to really make a safe space for them to fail and then encourage learning from that failure. And so I think it's one of the best ways that we can learn about our systems is learning from how they fail. And so that is kind of one bit of advice I would give to anyone who's looking to really spin up that kind of reliability culture. If you can make it a safe space for folks to fail, you can really capitalize on those failures and learn from them. It's like night and day how quickly you can then improve your systems.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Keep Moving Forward, the podcast from X-Team for tech professionals who are passionate about growth, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Caleb Brown, and in each episode, we'll dive into candid conversations with the tech industry's brightest minds, seasoned leaders, forward-thinking engineers, and visionary experts. Today, I'm excited to welcome Molly Struve, Staff Site Reliability Engineer at Netflix. Molly has had an incredible career journey, transitioning from aerospace engineering to tackling the complex challenges of site reliability at one of the world's most innovative companies. In this episode, Molly shares how she builds a culture of trust and collaboration within engineering teams, her approach to learning from failure to create resilient systems, and the role of mentorship in fostering growth and emotional intelligence in tech. Molly also provides a behind-the-scenes look at the practices Netflix uses to ensure reliability at scale, offering invaluable insights for engineers and leaders alike. Whether you're interested in scaling systems, developing team dynamics, or embracing a growth mindset in tech, this conversation is filled with practical advice and inspiration. Ready to dive in? Let's get started. Well, Molly, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Caleb, for having me. I'm really excited to talk about, all these things that really feed into engineering leadership, especially the soft skills. It's something I'm very passionate about. And I think it's really the key to kind of unlocking that leadership ability in a lot of people. So excited to talk more and dive in.
Absolutely agree. And so let's go ahead with just kind of learning a little bit about, your career journey, because you do have a pretty interesting background and an interesting career journey. So I was wondering if you can kind of start us from your aerospace engineering degree all the way to your current role at Netflix.
Yeah, I would love to. So one of the things I've kind of learned throughout this journey of mine was that no matter what you're doing, as you're kind of going along, I found that it's really served me well to just do things that interest me. And that takes me to the aerospace engineering where I started. So I went into college thinking I might go into software because that's what my dad did. And I was taking a software class. It was, not going to lie, a little bit boring. And the guy who lived next door was in the intro to aerospace class. And he kept coming over and being like, we get to build rockets. We get to build parachutes. And I thought, well, that sounds a heck of a lot more interesting than me just typing Python on a computer. Right. So you know what? I'm going to go check out that class. And 4 years later, got an aerospace degree and loved it. Absolutely loved it. Totally enjoyed college. And then ironically, found my way into options trading. Again, it was an interesting opportunity. I took it. And after 2 years of doing that, ironically, I made my way back into software. And so throughout that kind of whole journey, each time I made a decision, I made the decision based on what did I think was interesting. And I will also say I was very lucky that I had a lot of flexibility in my life to just kind of follow my passions. But I find that especially when you're young, don't be afraid to try new things. Especially because usually when you're young, you don't have a lot of strings attached. You can kind of move around freely. And that's the time to really explore and find out what fills your cup. And then hopefully you end up in a profession that's really gonna kind of fulfill you for the rest of your life, which I feel like I have found when I finally made my way into software engineering and then eventually site reliability. And so that is one thing I've learned early on, was that the people are so important. Another thing that really kind of landed with me in the startup world was that ability to have impact. And I think that's one of the great things about startups is you can go in. The first startup I was at, we had 4 engineers, and I came in and I was the intern.
Yep.
It didn't matter. I was contributing code. I was pushing code straight to production within the first couple of weeks. And to be able to have that impact, I think it really allows you to feel like you're contributing early on. And that's what kind of, in my opinion, for me, just got me hooked into software engineering, seeing like, wow, I can literally make something, push it out, and people in the world can consume it very quickly. And once you kind of get that loop going, then it's kind of addictive. And so having that impact was really important to me early on. And even as I went into bigger companies, eventually finding myself at Netflix, I made sure along the way that I was fulfilling that need for impact, making sure that even though I'm at a big company such as Netflix, I can still have that impact. I still feel like I can work across a large range of engineers and really drive forward progress on initiatives and just, again, have that impact.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And that's awesome that, you can have that impact in a larger company and kind of take some of that, the pros of a startup into other environments. Wanted to jump in a little bit now that we've kind of started talking a little bit about kind of culture and a little bit of leadership. In your current role at Netflix, you're focused on driving reliability and availability and the culture behind that. I wonder if you could just kind of elaborate on what this entails and why it's critical to have that culture.
Yeah. So at Netflix, we rely on kind of a central reliability team, which means, as an SRE, like we can't do it all. We've got hundreds of services around us, and we really have to influence through the culture and through ourselves those best practices so that engineers know what the right thing to do is in terms of availability and reliability. And so when you're kind of approaching building a culture like that, I think the first thing you really want to do is lay a good foundation. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, it's really important, whether it is yourself as an individual or whether it's a team you're on, if you're on a central team, to build a rapport, to build a trust with those around you that you want to influence and drive this culture. Because that foundation is then going to allow you to build whatever culture you want on top of it. And so that is something I really learned a little bit later in my career. I think at the beginning of my career, when I was younger, I was very black and white. I think a lot of us engineers can relate to that. We're very, okay, well, if I give them the data, they're going to agree with me and they're going to go and do X, Y, Z that I want them to do. And that's not quite how the world works. A lot of people, really kind of lead with their heart when they want to follow you, or they lean in and go with you because of their belief system. And so that was something that was kind of eye-opening to me as I've been working at Netflix, is that it's not all about the data when it comes to things like credibility and trust. A lot of times it's about trust, about, trusting that that person has your best interests in mind. And so that's why I think laying that foundation of trust is really where it all starts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And can you maybe share an example of a successful cultural change that you've implemented and the impact that it had?
Yeah. So last year, probably actually a year and a half ago now, at this point, we decided to democratize incident management at Netflix. So instead of just having one team focusing on creating all incidents, we realized there was a benefit from getting all teams involved. And this was going to be a pretty drastic change. All of a sudden, we were going to ask service owners to manage their own incidents, to document them. And so one of the things I did with the support of the team around me was, before we did anything before we went out and looked at different tools and options was we went around and we talked to as many stakeholders as we could. Everyone from like the data people to like the content people, anyone that was either going to be managing incidents, that were interested in these incidents, we sat down and we talked to them. And during those conversations, we really seeked to understand what they would need in a solution. Because we have, our preconceived ideas of like what we want this, incident management tool to do. But a lot of times the stakeholders, the people who want to use it, the service owners, they have different concerns. They have different worries. And what I found through those conversations was that really hearing those folks out right off the bat, then they kind of almost were just bought in to this, exploring this new path with us. And I also think it made them feel as if they were included in the journey. It wasn't this central team bringing in this tool and then shoving it onto like service owners to use. Instead, we were like, hey, we want to do this. We want to bring you along in this journey. And so we want to know before we even go out and start looking at tools, like, what do you want out of these tools? And so I think they felt very bought in from the beginning. And that just made the whole process. Once we picked a tool, we kind of knew what we were looking for. And when the tool landed, everyone was super excited. It was kind of like this non-issue. You're waiting for this wall to go up or someone to object. And it never happened. Mm-hmm. And I really credit that to the fact that we brought in those stakeholders so early and we ensured that they felt heard.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, it sounds like building a product, right? It sounds like you're listening to the customers and stakeholders and building something that, actually works for folks. That's awesome. I was interested how emotional intelligence plays a role in your leadership style and even your kind of approach to problem solving.
Yeah, I think that goes back to something I kind of mentioned earlier, mm-hmm. and that is I've realized recently in the past few years that my emotional intelligence is probably what's going to help me move the needle on initiatives more than, say, my technical knowledge. And that goes back to, again, that kind of trust building. People, lead with their hearts. They want to join a cause that they believe in. Mm-hmm. And yeah, does that mean, sometimes that includes data, sometimes that includes like a proof of concept. You actually got to show it works. But most of the time, people want to follow someone that they trust and connect to. And so that has really been a big shift for me. And when it comes to kind of problem solving, and it goes back to my earlier example, engaging stakeholders early, getting curious. I think it's very easy when you're solving a problem to have a very narrow lens when you're solving it. You have your understanding of the world and you're going to try to solve the problem in that understanding. And you can solve it so much more effectively if you step outside of that understanding and you get curious. You talk to different people. You get input early. And I think that's the biggest thing that has changed for me in terms of solving problems is I take a much more collaborative approach. I'm not just solving them on my own anymore. I am including other folks early and often in that process. And what I've seen is that you end up with more robust solutions that folks want to engage in.
Absolutely. Well, and so speaking of involving other folks, the next question I had for you was kind of how do you foster that emotional intelligence within teams, and especially teams that kind of prioritize technical skills?
I think one of the best ways to do it is by setting a good example.
Yeah.
And that falls on the technical leaders in the team as well as the managers and kind of on up the chain. Being vulnerable, going and having those kind of conversations with folks about growth areas outside of technical growth. I think that's one of the best ways to really kind of set that example, especially early on, especially when you're an early career engineer and your only focus is, I gotta get better at coding. it can be really important for those around you on your team, your manager, to kind of step back and say, hey, let's talk about communication skills. Let's talk about the other skills that are going to help really round you out as an engineer.
Absolutely. Great segue actually to talking a little bit about career development and mentorship. And I know that you mentioned kind of the impact of career coaching on your professional growth. And I wonder if you could just kind of elaborate a little bit about that and how that has benefited you.
I would love to. I feel like this is something I will say I've only recently discovered in the past year. And I think it's the secret that everyone needs to know about because I cannot say enough good things about career coaching. So for myself, it has really allowed me to understand why I have certain tendencies, why I might show up in unideal ways in certain situations. And so when I understand why I might not show up, for example, let's say I'm not confident in a meeting and I want to show up more confidently. If I understand why I'm not showing up confidently to that meeting, then instead of just brute forcing, as I would say, giving myself a rah-rah chant before, instead of that kind of brute force approach, I can break down why I'm not confident and address it more effectively. So in some cases, it might be, maybe I don't feel a connection to anyone in the audience. Maybe I need to invest some time getting to know the folks that are in that meeting. And then there's no need for a rah-rah because I'll just feel comfortable with them to begin with. I think another pressure I felt in meetings where I'm not confident is I feel like I have to have the answer. And when kind of breaking that down, I looked at myself and thought, do I expect those around me to have the answer? No. Then why do I expect it from myself? And so having those little introspective moments, breaking down those kind of habits has allowed me to more effectively grow and really just unlocked a lot of understanding I have about my own personal tendencies. And it's been really an enlightening process. And I would highly recommend anyone, even if you're just a little bit curious, to try out career coaching, give it a go, and you might unlock something that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. So staying on that topic, how do you kind of approach mentoring and developing engineers that are on your team?
So with this career coach, I feel so blessed in my ability to have mentors and grow that I always am looking for opportunities to pay it forward. So one of the things I think is important is, as a leader, kind of take inventory of your strengths and look for opportunities to share those strengths and lift those up around you. There are probably a lot more opportunities than you realize. And I will also say that the smallest bit of help or encouragement is going to go a lot further than you think. I'll never forget sharing a little bit of advice, or even literally just giving feedback to someone. They ran an instant review and I said, hey, you did a really great job for XYZ reasons. And I found out like a month later, that was a hugely impactful and pivotal moment for them. And so some people think, oh, if I need to mentor, it needs to be like, 30 minutes every couple of weeks or like an hour a month. Like, it doesn't need to be formal. All those little opportunities, those are going to be the ones that you're going to just change little parts of people's lives, and it's going to be for the better. So I encourage formal mentoring, obviously, but also I think you can have a ton of impact informally.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have any advice for anyone at any level that's interested in maybe hearing it, being influenced for the first time by hearing this about a career coach? Is it something you should look for kind of internally, someone you sort of already know? Are you a fan of sort of going out and looking for an outside expert? I'm just curious your tips, because it seems like you found a good spot.
Yeah, so I got lucky. Netflix has a benefit for mental health, and they use a platform called Lyra, Lyra. So I would encourage folks, especially if you work at a larger company, look into what your mental health benefits might be. Again, this is something I didn't know we had until I, felt like I wanted to talk to somebody, and I started searching in our Netflix Slack, and I was like, oh, we have this benefit. Let me check out this benefit. So I think a lot of larger companies these days are really kind of recognizing the benefits of supporting employees in kind of their mental health. And so you might be surprised at what your company offers. So Lyra, great platform, and I'm sure there's many others out there, but look at maybe what your company has to offer and go from there.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. I'm glad you're able to share an app or platform that folks can go explore. Curious, getting a little bit more back into the technical kind of, was interested if you could explain kind of the concept of reliability culture and why it's essential for companies like Netflix.
Yeah. So whenever I kind of describe site reliability engineering or just reliability engineering in general, I always think of it as a mindset. So yes, you need observability tools to do it. You're going to want like resiliency tools. But I think when it comes down to it, you don't need all that fancy stuff. In the end, it's how you're approaching developing your code. Are you making it scalable? Are you making it easy for folks to understand and work with in the future? Are you ensuring that you understand how it's going to operate in production? When it does fail, are you taking the time to really learn from those failures? And so I think those are things that if you keep them top of mind as you're developing software, you're going to set yourself up for reliability and availability success. So I don't think, you don't need a lot of the fancy schmancy site reliability stuff. I think it really just comes down to leaning into some of those really good basics. Some folks call them operational excellence. Some folks might refer to it as tech health. But I think if you have a really solid foundation with those and you stay on top of things like your operations, alerting, observability, then you're going to set yourself up for success in terms of being able to run a service or application that is going to be reliable and available. Yeah.
And it sounds like it might be, correct me if I'm wrong, but it might be something that some folks have different views on. I'm curious if you ran into some kind of challenges or maybe common challenges you've seen multiple times, that you've kind of come across when trying to improve system reliability across like a full organization.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that I have seen is folks' hesitation to lean in and understand failure. I think a lot of times as engineers, you're building something, your goal is not to fail. Your goal is to build something that's robust. It's going to go out there. And so a lot of times I see when something fails, when something breaks in production, a lot of folks just want to hurry up, fix it, and move on. And they think, oh man, I pushed out bad code. It was my mistake. Oh, I just want this to go away. I'm going to push out good code, and we're just going to put my head down and hope not a lot of people noticed. And that is very counterproductive, because what a lot of folks don't realize is, okay, maybe someone pushed a bug. It happens, first of all. If you're in this industry, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Absolutely. If you're in this industry long enough. So let's set that baseline. We're all going to fail. We're all going to push a bug to production. We're going to take production down. But I think what's really important for folks to understand is what leads to that bug getting into production. It's not just one engineer possibly pushing. It's, well, why didn't our test catch it? Maybe we didn't have alerting. Maybe a customer brought it to us. There's a whole complex socio-technical and technical system that contributes to an incident happening. And if folks take a pause and they take time to look at that whole system, the bug itself, fixing the bug, that is super minor. But if you can look outside that bug and think, okay, how do I now make this whole system more resilient?
Yeah.
that's going to then prevent 10 more incidents in the future. That's going to make sure that maybe the next time a bug is pushed, it doesn't even hit production. And so the only way to get people to kind of look and dive deep is to really make a safe space for them to fail and then encourage learning from that failure. And so I think it's one of the best ways that we can learn about our systems is learning from how they fail. And so that is kind of one bit of advice I would give to anyone who's looking to really spin up that kind of reliability culture. If you can make it a safe space for folks to fail, you can really capitalize on those failures and learn from them. It's like night and day how quickly you can then improve your systems.
Absolutely agree. So wanted to kind of continue on talking about sort of scaling engineering teams. And I wanted to talk about, based on your experience leading engineering teams of various sizes, what are just some of the key challenges in scaling those teams effectively? And I imagine it is different for a smaller team versus a larger.
Yeah. So, I think one, it starts off with just that buy-in, laying that kind of foundation and getting folks to kind of agree with your vision of the team. And I say your vision, again, bring all those folks along with the vision of where you want the culture to go. I think another, depending on kind of your size of your team, are you running multiple teams? It can be really beneficial to also engage in champions, get champions that are really bought into kind of your vision to whatever you're working on, and use them to then help kind of disperse that message and get other folks on board, teach other folks about the different ways that you want to do things. So I think it's kind of that two-prong approach of, as much as you can, including folks in whatever journey you want to take. And then also, depending how many folks you've got, sometimes you can't include all of them. If you got like 50 engineers or something, then get those champions to kind of go out there and champion your message for you and help bring back the bits of feedback that you might need in order to kind of course correct or adjust.
My next question there was if you could share an example of a time when strong soft skills, really significantly impacted the success of a technical product or project rather. I was wondering if you did have any from your experience.
Yeah. So one, the ability to communicate to folks what your product does, how it works, especially when you're working in a distributed system. And you have a lot of services, they're all relying on each other. You got upstreams, you got downstreams. If you can effectively communicate kind of how your service works within that system, that's going to allow the teams around you to more effectively, work with you and your service. I think another item that I have found really effective, no matter what you're doing, is the ability to communicate through writing. So Netflix has a really big memo culture. When we're doing proposals, when we have ideas, a lot of times we write memos. And if you can communicate an idea through a memo, that allows your reach to just grow exponentially. You no longer have to worry about being in the right meeting or talking to someone. You've got a link, you've got your idea, and you can then spread that to tons of folks for kind of input and feedback. So I think written communication is really important. How do you get that idea across succinctly and quickly? Because no one has time to read 10 pages of memos these days. You have a very small window to capture someone's attention. And I have learned quite a lot from like product folks and even kind of marketing folks that I can tie in then to like get ideas that I had out there and help them stick with people. So I think that is super, super critical. Written communication, I think, is one of those underutilized skills that can be more impactful than you recognize.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And again, something I kind of had to learn being fully remote and our entire organization being on Slack. And even, Slack way more so than even email. But so much of communication I do is written, whereas in former jobs it wasn't. And it was a little bit of an adjustment, but it can be very, very powerful. The last time we spoke, you mentioned introducing incident management tooling at Netflix. And I was curious to hear a little bit more about how that has improved your team's ability to handle and learn from these incidents.
Yeah, so the introduction of incident management, which, as I kind of mentioned, we democratize incident management. So it's no longer a central team just creating incidents. It is now hundreds of teams.
Yeah.
And so we went from this ecosystem where we had 20 or 30 incidents that were reported a month. Because let's be honest, when we have a big system like Netflix, you're having more than 20 incidents. And now we have upwards of hundreds, thousands that are being reported. And it's all of varying levels from, outages that maybe impact customers to even the small ones. And we have just seen such a growth of engagement with service owners getting excited to use this tool. And that was kind of one of the things that made us use this tool. It's called Instant.io, is that it is so user-friendly, and it just takes you on that incident journey.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. Some feedback we've gotten is that it's kind of fun to use. And so all of a sudden you see service owners want to engage with this tool. And then the snowball effect is that now they're digging into their incidents, they're learning from them. Their leaders are seeing this happen, and they're like, hey, how do we support you? How can we give you the bandwidth to then, kind of go and fix these things? And so just the general sentiment of we now have service owners, engineers that are learning about their services, and we're raising kind of just the awareness of how much we can all benefit from learning from these failures. And so it's been pretty incredible to watch that process unfold.
Very cool. And then last one that I'll close it out for, you're a very aware, very insightful person. And I'm curious, if there was one thing you can kind of change about the tech industry or its culture, what would that be and why?
I think it would be continuing to make it a safe space for folks to fail. Mm-hmm. I still see and know of companies that have more toxic cultures where if you fail, you're fired. And I think even if you're not at that company, it still perpetuates a little bit of a fear, like, wow, that the person made a mistake and they were kind of reprimanded for it. So that's kind of the biggest thing, is continuing to push on that. Failure is part of running highly complex technical systems. We're not going to ever get away from it. And so I think the more we can embrace that, the better off and the more robust our systems are going to be at the end, and a better culture and space we're going to make it for folks to kind of work within the industry.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I think a great point to end on. Molly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Caleb, for having me.
Of course. What an insightful conversation with Molly about navigating the complex world of site reliability and fostering resilience at scale. Molly's thoughtful approach to balancing technical challenges with team empowerment stood out as the key takeaway. Her emphasis on fostering collaboration and a culture of experimentation reminds us that reliability isn't just about the systems, it's about the people who build and maintain them. Her stories about managing global infrastructure at Netflix and her reflections on the importance of resilience and adaptability were both inspiring and practical. Molly's journey highlights how a thoughtful, human-centered approach to engineering can lead to innovation and sustained success. Thank you, Molly, for sharing your experiences and invaluable insights into reliability, collaboration, and leadership. And thank you to our listeners for being part of this conversation. It's stories like this that remind us why we keep moving forward. Join us next time for more insightful conversations with tech leaders who inspire us to grow, lead, and innovate. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube Music. And don't forget to share this episode if it resonated with you. Until next time.